At first I thought I was going crazy, that something in my head was unstable. I wondered if what I was seeing was even real. To this day, I still don't understand the events. Thanks to her, I can no longer tell fantasy apart from reality. It's scary, you know. I want to share this story. I want to share my story. I want to warn people about her, let them know how serious this actually is. This is not a joke. I'm not doing this for attention. This is real. You have to listen. You have to listen, and you have to spread the word. Don't let her get a hold of you, because once she does, you'll turn out like me. I had just finished getting home from work, and I decided to lay down on the dusty old couch and watch the news. It wasn't peculiar or anything like that. I mean, I always watch the news after work. As I was listening to the reports on robberies, drug busts, and riots, something interesting caught my eye. Most generally, nothing on the news really captivated me and got my full attention, but this did. It was murder. Well, to be precise, more than one, several in fact. Reporters stated that every victim involved in the incident was skinned and butchered, but that wasn't what attracted me to the details. The town, Birmingham, that was my town. It was unbelievable. Sure, robberies, riots, and drugs I could understand, but murder? Not only that, but the reporters said that the incident had been going on for over a week. Shit, where the hell had I been? I've been watching the news every night at 6 for the past 2 years, so how in hell could I have missed something like that? Did I zone out maybe? Something like that? Must have. Anyways, I ended up listening to the story for a bit before I eventually turned off the television and put some popcorn in the microwave. I realized that turning the TV off was kind of an ignorant thing to do, but you see, when I think, I need it to be quiet, aside from the crunching sound of popcorn, or else my mind goes in all different directions. I must have spent at least an hour trying to wrap my head around the possibilities as to how I could have missed such a distressful event. I keep repeating this part because it's how I honestly felt at the time. It just didn't make any sense how something that big could slip right under my nose. Me being me, it didn't take long to eventually pass out. Funny thing was that the popcorn bowl was still secured in my hands as I slept, and once I finally woke the next day, I noticed the kernels scattered across the floor and couch. Let's just say I had a lot of cleaning up to do. I picked up the floor, vacuumed, and just to make myself feel at least a little bit unsullied, I went ahead and undertook the dishes. Oh, and one minuscule little detail you should keep in mind. When I was doing the dishes, I accidentally skewered myself with a knife like the half-wit I am. One of the many pretexts why I rarely ever do my dishes, mind you. Moving on with the story, about 5 minutes later after I fulfilled my dish duty, I got a knock on my door. Obviously, when a person knocks, you open it. At least, I do anyways. So that's exactly what I did. I'll be honest, I think I crapped myself when I opened the door. I was stuck between two feelings. Holy smokes, a hot babe. And what the fuck? It was a woman, however, not just any woman. This woman gave me an immediate shiver. I couldn't tell whether or not it was good or bad, but damn did I feel it. It felt icy, paralyzing, perplexing. The shiver was so vigorous that every single hair in my body stood up as if each individual hair were in a roll call order for the military. Being a fan of creepy and many other fucked up things, I was captivated and ecstatic inside, but on the same note I felt transfixed. I questioned this because I was never good at making out emotions. This lady's hair, holy shit. It was on fire. Literally. Okay, maybe not literally on fire, but it was exceedingly close to being on fire. It was bright red, I'm talking fire truck red. Aside from that attraction, her eyes were also red, crimson to be exact. Jesus, it was so true. People really did wear unnatural colored contact lenses in public. Don't get me wrong here, I think they're absolutely off the chain, but weren't things like those meant to be worn during Halloween or something like that? Last I checked, which was actually before I did the dishes, it was July 14th, 2002. Hell, who knows, they could have switched Halloween to July. Frankly, it wouldn't surprise me. I live in America. I remember exactly what she said to me. "Hello, I'm Charlene, your new neighbor." Of course, I responded to her greeting, and there was really nothing strange about any of that, but what really freaked me out was what came next. You remember how I mentioned I got skewered by a knife? Yeah, well, this chick did the most creepiest thing I swear to God I've ever seen before. She reached out with those long, pale arms of hers, grabbed my hand, and began to slowly caress my wound as she muttered softly, "Your skin, it's sensitive. You bleed a lot easier than others." How astounding. What? Astounding. That's it. Those were the only few sentences that came out of her mouth. Even to this day, I still get the creepy crawlies just thinking about it. I slowly pulled my hand away, my heart beating a mile a minute as I choked back a raspy breath. In my mind, I didn't thoroughly comprehend what the mysterious lady had done. It was like I'd fallen into an immediate trance after her skin grazed against mine. Her skin, that rugged, patchy skin. It looked so irregular, unnatural. Those crimson eyes stared into mine as she slowly leaned in, gave a discombobulated smirk, turned, and then walked away. I stood there for a moment, a bit dazed and off balance before I myself turned and walked away. That night I couldn't sleep. You see, I like to call myself a realist, so for the longest time I sat. I tried to come up with any logical explanation as to what could have perchance caused my new neighbor to act the way she did. What if she was on some kind of medication? Mentally challenged? Fuck's sake, high? Now, to you, you might be thinking, "Sean, don't you think you were overreacting a little bit?" No, I was not overreacting. That lady, Charlene, she did something to me. I tried to tell people, I really did, but no one would listen to me. They didn't believe me. They said I needed to go to a therapist. I wasn't crazy. I'm not crazy now. I never was. I swear this really happened. The next day I was off, so I took my free time and spent it relaxing in the living room. I'll admit, I felt a hell of a lot better that day than the previous one. I wasn't so riled up. I specifically remember a feeling of apprehension as I heard a knock on the door. I got up, situated a hand on the doorknob, and swung the door open. Thank God it wasn't her. It was a man. More specifically, the mailman. He asked me to sign in order to receive a package, but I didn't remember ever ordering anything, and no one really sent me anything, so I was a bit demented. Nonetheless, though, I signed the paper and took the package before securing the door. I scanned the medium-sized box, which, in my opinion, weighed over 10 pounds, examining it to see if maybe there was some form of contact information. My throat went dry. I did find a name, and I read it out loud. Charlene Valentine. It was obvious the mailman had unintentionally mixed up the addresses. I honestly thought about just keeping the package, but then a huge wave of potential guilt washed over me. I had to return the package to its rightful owner, so that's what I did. Just as soon as I stepped onto Charlene's doorstep, I heard these strange voices. They sang the same sentence over and over again. Charlene, Charlene, you're sure to scream. I debunked this as some sort of television show of the sort, or the possibility she was a part of some kind of horror project. I took a breath in, and then knocked on the door a few times. I waited, and I waited, but nothing. No one came to the door. I don't know why I even did it, but I decided to turn the doorknob, and to my incredulity, it was unlocked. This was perfect, though. I could just quietly sneak in, drop off the package, and then leave without Charlene ever knowing. I know what you're thinking. "Sean, why didn't you just leave the package on her doorstep?" Believe me, that was my original plan, but with the recent robbery cases and all that jazz, I didn't want someone to just waltz by and snatch it up. After all, I'm a good guy, so I've been told. I walked in and almost immediately I smelled this disgusting smell. It was the most nauseating, most revolting thing I'd ever smelt in my entire life. As I soundlessly walked across the living room floor, I looked around momentarily before eventually setting the box down on the kitchen table. There was no hiding the fact that I was dying inside. This house it made me feel like I was in an actual horror film. Once again, I love horror, gore, and whatnot, but you don't understand how terrified that house made me feel. As I turned, preparing to exit through the doorway, I heard clanking. It sounded as if someone were banging two metal pipes together. It was absolutely deafening. Every time I'd watch a scary movie, I'd always yell about one specific thing. Why? Why did they always have to check out a noise? That's what got them all killed. Lord behold, here I was, investigating the creepiest fucking noise in my life. By this time in the story, I'm sure you can realize just how ignorant I really am. I won't deny it. Eventually, I discovered that the noise was coming from underneath the floor, the basement. Cautiously, I made my way to the top of the basement staircase, and once again, I heard that chant. This time it was ringing inside my head. Charlene, Charlene, you're sure to scream. After about 6 or so steps, there was a long, narrow window in the wall, and when I peeked through it, my chest caved in. It was she, Charlene. I'm sorry, telling all of this is bringing back some unwanted flashbacks. Anyways, I got a little bit closer, thinking that perhaps either my eyesight was just off, or that I wasn't close enough to see what was really going on. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. There was a large lab table in the center of the room. It seemed a bit old-fashioned. I guess a way to describe it would be a sort of vintage style. Classic. There was a body on the table. A real human body, though. It was nearly butchered by the time my eyes were set on it. There were loads and loads of tools scattered throughout the room. Some were on blood-stained tables, some were displayed on the wall, on shelves, some were even strung all over the floor. Hovering over the bloodied and close to slaughtered corpse was Charlene. Fearing that I'd be seized if I made a single solitary noise, I practically held my breath. Everything just looked so unrealistic, so unfeasible that I was unable to properly load the situation in my head. My eyes shot to the side, watching as long, patchy hands retrieved a scalpel from one of the tables in the room. As I watched that scalpel cut into the flesh on that table, I gagged. I felt an instantaneous affliction in my stomach. The scene was so grim that I had to cover my mouth. It was at that time I realized. Butcher, skin, murder. Everything fell right into place. Charlene, she was the killer. As soon as she carved off a piece of skin, that was it. I was out of there. Slowly I began to turn around, but just as I was a few steps down from the top of the stairs, a loud creak sounded throughout the entire house. Shit, shit, shit. There was no time for being inaudible now. I bolted for the last few stairs, immediately hearing foreign footsteps behind me. The door was right there. It was only a few feet away, but before I could escape, I felt a hand grab onto the back of my shirt and fiercely yank me away from the doorway. My heart was beating faster than a racehorse, and it was at that time my life flashed before my eyes. With all the strength I had, I thrashed and jerked around, used everything in my body I could in order to break free of that woman's death grip. I finally got loose, but it was only a matter of seconds before everything went completely black. When I came to, I was tied down, wrists, feet, and all. I was unable to yell due to the fabric tied around my mouth. I could hear my erratic heartbeat obnoxiously ringing in my eardrums as I looked at my surroundings. Once again, I heard it. Charlene, Charlene, you're sure to scream. Charlene stood in front of the table, her back turned away from me as the sound of metal clanked together. She faced me. Good, you're awake, she said. You know, eavesdropping isn't very nice, though. I'm very happy you could join me. Me and my children were getting terribly lonely. I was confused at first with the word children, but as soon as the sickening hand of hers rubbed along the patchy area of skin on her arm, I got the memo. When she walked up beside me, I lost it. I tried to break free. I tried and tried, but to no avail. It wasn't long before I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen, crimson-colored liquid rushing down my bare, exposed skin. Honestly, in that moment, I was glad my mouth was covered. If I had to listen to my ear-piercing screams, I most likely would have broken down right then and there. I couldn't tell you how long I was on that table, because seconds felt like hours. Hours and hours of agonizing pain. After what seemed like decades, my body finally went numb. I closed my eyes somewhere in the beginning, but after I opened them back up, I noticed that Charlene had stopped carving my body in order to switch up her murder tool. This was my chance. As quickly and quietly as I could, I tugged on the ropes that restrained my hands and feet. I prayed, and I prayed. And like a miracle had been given to me, the ropes miraculously gave way. Thank goodness I couldn't feel anything at the moment, or else I wouldn't have been able to run up those stairs as fast as I did. I didn't look back, and I didn't stop for nothing. I didn't care about clothes, and I didn't care about anything else I potentially left behind. I closed my eyes as I hauled ass towards the front door. I stumbled a few times, but I didn't let that stop me. I kept going and going until I eventually made it out. I was lucky enough to survive her attack, but others might not be so lucky. Please, you have to warn people about Charlene. If you don't spread the word, she'll... Charlene, Charlene, you're sure to scream.